So as we're talking about restoration, I've identified a couple of projects to kind of get started with. Some things that we can do out there that are at least somewhat manageable in the near term. Invasive species and brush control, establish a native meadow, and the wetland restoration. This is a little map that I created that kind of shows some of the management practices that I included in the plan. And this covers everything, and I'll move through some of the others. But a lot of the brush management and invasive species, I would focus in this hardwood system, this mixed hardwood area, to kind of recapture some of that natural regeneration if possible. Open it up, it's a pretty area, trying to remove that invasive component. This area here with the white, speckled white, is about a 10 or 11 acre area that I've identified to potentially recapture that open land and put in a native grass wildflower mix, and then a couple other little features while I have the map up. This quasi rectangle here, I included a kind of an experimental agricultural area, since that was brought up as a potential interest for the school as well, and then some of the trails as well. So invasive species control. That's probably a #1 priority for out there. The place is loaded with invasive species, unfortunately. I think it's a neat piece of property, but invasive species are kind of like cancer. They can set in quickly when given a chance, and they can be tough to remove, but it's important ecologically. There's a lot of different methods of going about doing that, and there's a lot of people that have strong feelings one way or another about different methods. So in reality, if you want to tackle the invasives, you might want to consider using a combination of all of these. Herbicide is a very effective and can be very selective way to treat individual plants. The mechanical method, this is called a Forestry Mulcher, and I'll dive into that a little bit more. That's probably going to be one of your most useful tools, just to kind of get in there and get a start. And then in the future, you could potentially use something like goats to help manage certain areas and keep some of that brush and invasive species out. So here's the Forestry Mulcher. I've been working with this tool on a couple of projects recently, and it's pretty amazing. This particular picture, I'll explain what's going on here. There was about 6 acres of tree of heaven, Alanthus, and it was essentially a monoculture. We went in, we treated all the trees with herbicide so they were dead, and then we used the Forestry Mulcher to just level this whole area, and we're going to replant that with native hardwoods and some shortleaf pine. What happens is this is a little skid steer, and it has this rotating head that just kind of grinds the tree. It's pretty amazing. And a lot of the species will grow back, but at least they'll be manageable. And this tool would also be useful for helping with establishing trails, for clearing the native meadow area from the big overgrown old field system. So it may have a lot of useful applications for the Conservancy. Sue wanted me to put in some costs, and these are some estimates to give you an idea of what some of these things cost. And a lot of these costs are probably going to come up front. The Forestry Mulcher you might use for a couple of weeks the first year, and you're done with it. You may never have to use it again. So that's a big cost up front, but it's going to do a lot to help you get control of things. Given the vegetation type out there, and I've never had this thing run through acres of Osage orange, but the trees aren't very big. I'm guessing it can average between 2, 3, 4 acres a day that machine can go through. And again, it's going to depend on how fine you want the mulch. Do you want it ground into the ground? Operational costs are about $125 per hour to run the machine. So just a quick little proposed thing. You potentially want to do 15 acres. That's the 11 acres of or 10, 11 acres of native meadow to clear. Couple acres for the experimental agricultural area, and then kind of moving through and selectively hitting some of the worst invasive areas in the hardwood forest. You're looking at about approximately 5 days, 8-hour days, for a total cost of between $5,000 and $6,000 potentially. The native meadow. native grassland systems are in decline, or they were. A lot of people think that forest restoration is kind of the only thing that we do ecologically, but native grasslands were a significant component of eastern states prior to European colonization. There's been a lot of focus and effort on restoring some of these systems. And so this is an idea to utilize up in kind of the upper regions where it flattens out some. Put in a 10 to 11 acre native grass and wildflower meadow. And this would be reclaiming a portion of that old field that's grown up in the invasives and the Osage orange, honey locust, things like that. So the first thing to do would be take the mulcher or some other sort of land clearing and clear the vegetation that's there, and then treat any weed problems, residual fescue, the invasives that may pop up once we've opened up that closed canopy. And then to either drill or broadcast plant a mixture of native warm season grasses and wildflowers. These native meadows can be fairly costly. You've got some preparation time. You'll have the forestry mulcher, which the costs have already explained. Treating the area might cost about $35 an acre for more of a broadcast type system to kind of control those weeds. The no-till drill, this is a no-till drill, and basically you're not having to really disturb the soil. The soil may already be slightly disturbed from the mulcher, but this is a way to go. And the Smithsonian actually has recently acquired a no-till drill that I'm sure the school can use for almost nothing. So that's why I started the cost at $0, and $200 per acre is a good estimate for the use of the tractor and drill. So you've got some equipment that you'll need to implement and somebody to drive it, obviously. The grass and flower seed, this can get pretty expensive depending on what wildflowers you choose. Some of these wildflowers can be $600 a pound. So that's variable, but I would estimate anywhere from $75 to $125 per acre if you want to get a nice mix of a lot of diverse wildflowers in there. This native meadow establishment is at the top, one of the top priority on the list for practices through some of our natural resource conservation practices through the Farm Bill. And I've used a couple of programs this past year, and we've gotten about $350 an acre to implement this strategy on areas. Quick little thing about the Farm Bill. This is a crazy year. The Farm Bill expired in September. Essentially, the current Farm Bill we have, our Congress has not come up with a new one. They're not functioning at the moment, so if anybody has any political connections, pick up the phone and try and get these guys to come up with a Farm Bill soon. But in all likelihood, it's not going to happen until the election. It's also an election year, so things are just crazy. We did meet with Brent Baratow this morning, or this afternoon, and looked over some of these practices. He's the district conservationist in the area. The guy can help implement some of these, and he had some positive things to say. So we're going to kind of move forward with potentially using some of the Farm Bill cost share if it's around next year to do some of these, and this is one of the big practices. And the wetland restoration. The site needs some work. It's going to be difficult, and there's going to be some red tape. Anytime you deal with a jurisdictional wetland or stream, you have to deal with the Army Corps of Engineers potentially, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, maybe some local authorities. So there's going to be some navigation to get here, but it's a good thing, and everybody should be on board. I am not a wetland restoration specialist by any means. I know enough to be dangerous, but from some of the research that I've done here, one of the way to start is going to be to restore some of the hydrology in the system, to basically make it wetter. I'll look at this map here. There's a pretty significant ditch, and I'm not 100% sure if that's causing the problems now, but that ditch runs from right here. You can see it pretty clearly on this map all the way down the stream through the wetland. So there was probably some historical ditching. You've got the cattle in there. So restoring the hydrology, making the system wetter might help, and it might reduce some of that reed canary grass over a couple of years. Reed canary grass is a tough one. So if the hydrology doesn't work, you may have to come up with a different strategy, potentially herbicides, timing an herbicide application when everything else is dormant, and using something that's specific to grass. Because there are areas back, especially on the neighbor's property, that are it's a monoculture of reed canary grass. There's nothing else coming up. And again, you're going to have collaboration with your neighbors to work on this, because you don't want to flood their half without them really knowing.
Are you talking about sort of putting in a pond when you say restore hydrology? I mean, is that
not necessarily? No, it's not putting in a pond, because this thing, you can see it's full of vegetation.
Sure.
It's basically making the vast majority of it a little bit wetter.
So you're raising the water table.
Just, I mean, even just a few inches probably would do the trick.
So that ditch was probably put in a drain here.
More than likely, I don't know. It's tough to see. I mean, some wetlands it's a plain ditch running right through it. On this one, it's a little harder to see. Maybe some, if we can dig up a lot of aerial photos from the NRCS Farm Service office, that may help. You can see some of them on the aerial photo. Maybe some infrared shots will help with that as well. But that's something that's going to take some investigation to figure out what happened in the past and how to fix it. Okay. I have no idea what this project might cost. I mean, it's going to be extremely variable, whether you're moving dirt around or if it's just, you know, some minor things. So I'm sorry, but I have no idea what restoring that wetland might cost at this point. I can tell you that there are lots of potential cost share funding opportunities. NRCS Wetland Reserve Program, WRP, is a fairly commonly used one, and it's generating more interest. But again, we're dealing with the Farm Bill system that may eliminate this program next year. Who knows? We talked to Brent about that today, and that is a possibility. A potentially better possibility might be to apply for grants. There are a couple grants that I found that might work through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. The 5-star grant actually sounds perfect for a school. It's designed for education and for schools. They work with a lot of schools. It's a little complicated in that there needs to be a partnership. So the school is going to have to partner with a local authority, potentially the county, potentially Shenandoah Riverkeeper or Blandy or somebody like that to move it forward. But that could produce a lot of money, but they're going to be fairly competitive, I would assume, as well. Another one through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation is the Chesapeake Bay Small Watershed, and that can give $25,000 to $100,000 potentially to help restore that wetland. So.